Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me tell you what this show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real things. We like to talk about things in education, employment, self care. We've done episodes about homeschooling, resiliency, artificial intelligence, robots taking our jobs. So we like to cover a lot of different ground on hot topics, but all with one sole purpose, and that is to educate you. So after the end of my shows, my hope is that you guys learn something, right? And you can take that something and you can use it to improve your life, improve the life of others. So I like to think of this show as an educational show with an edgy twist to it, but all, of course, is for you to learn something, right? So as this show is a part of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So of course, think of it as an interesting twist to a tutoring session in a way. And I am looking forward to this show because, any opportunity to talk about teaching in any way and especially when it involves other countries, I'm all for it. So let's jump right into it. So the topic of the show today is teaching English abroad, right? So I have a guest who is going to talk about what's it like going to another country to teach English, right? And my guest today is, I hope I'm saying her name right, Jenae Spry. And let me tell you about her. So, Jenae Spry, she helps small business owners, whether they're solopreneurs or have already built a team, to prevent burnout, continue to grow their businesses, and protect their work life balance through productivity and systems. Beautiful. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring her to the stage. Hi, am I saying your name right? Jenae Spry?
Yeah, exactly right. I'm so impressed.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Jenae, welcome to Hot Topics. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, you have an interesting story to tell about teaching English abroad. I thought it was interesting when you talked about it in the preliminary interview. So, I wanted you to tell the world. So, now is your chance to shine. So, please tell us your story about your experience teaching English abroad.
Yeah, sure. So I got the opportunity in around 2002 to go to France. So it was Dijon, France, to teach English through a program there that's run by the French government, where they bring in native speakers, so English in my case, to actually teach English there. Very interesting experience. You could choose what age you wanted to teach. So whether you wanted to do elementary school, middle school, or high school. So I chose elementary school. I was completely terrified. I mean, completely terrified. Um, I did speak French for the most part, but I definitely got a lot better once I was there, and they did not really give us any training. So especially, I'm sure as a tutor, might make your heart skip a beat. But there were teachers in the classroom with us, and then we would go to different schools. So I believe it was 3 or 4 schools, ranging from all over the city, where I would go in and teach English for an hour. And it was an absolutely amazing experience. I really, really enjoyed it. We stayed in the dormitories of the local university. If anybody is out there considering doing a program like this, what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of cities, especially in the US, have what they call sister cities. So that means that they have an agreement between that city where they do some likely form of exchange, or just have additional laws or kind of paperwork in place to be able to more easily go between those cities. So I'm originally from Lexington, Kentucky, and Dijon, France was our sister city. And so as a result, everybody who did the program from Lexington all went to Dijon. So it was all people from Lexington that I was basically working with. But the program does all over France. And if you apply for similar programs, there's one for Japan. They have lots of different countries. A lot of times you'll get placed like wherever you get placed. So you don't really get to choose a city. So I was really fortunate that I actually got to choose the city. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted me to continue. I could probably talk about it forever.
That's all right. That's all right. All right. So let's nitpick at that a bit. So why France? What made you choose France?
Yeah, so I was a French major in school, and a lot of people that do this program typically do it as like their senior year. I did my sophomore year, which a lot of people don't do. But I felt pretty confident. I had already been to France before in my I realized I didn't know. And my previous trips there, I had a lot of support. And this time it was kind of like, all right, you're here. Like, these are the places you need to get. Way to navigate. How do you buy bus tickets? Like, how do you, and I'm pretty young at that point, my early 20s. So navigating all of that in a foreign language was really interesting. And then it turned out that some of the other people, you do have to pass a test, like to have a baseline amount of French to go. But one of my, then became friends, actually memorized all the answers that she thought would be on the test beforehand. So she didn't actually fully speak French. She just literally completely memorized it. So she had a bit of a hard time because she didn't actually speak French. But yeah, it was definitely really interesting. But yeah, it was mostly because I was a French major that I just wanted to be able to get there and spend time there. And then, I didn't have a lot of money. And a lot of people that do the study abroad programs, not only do you have to be able to support yourself while you're in the country, but you have to pay for the program itself. But in my case, I was actually getting paid. So, I had a job. Teaching English was considered a job, and they paid us like $1,000 a month, which back then at that age and that time seemed like I was just like rich.
So you were a French major in college, and were you fluent in French before you went, or no?
I was pretty fluent, but I was more of an exception than the rule. I probably had some of the better French of our group. A lot of people were still very much learning it at the time.
Okay. So you were already pretty much fluent at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You decided to major in French, right? And then you were already like immersed in the language, and then this opportunity came along. So now, maybe you can reiterate, how did you learn about this opportunity? Did you see a flyer somewhere? Did a representative come to the school? How did you find out?
Yeah, exactly. It was more like a representative came to the school. I had been looking for opportunities to go to France, for study abroad or something like that. So I had my eyes peeled, and the French department there, since I majored in French, had access to the opportunity and basically shared it with, everybody at the universities. University of Kentucky is where I went. And yeah, so I found out about it that way. And the university did do a great job of helping us navigate. We had to get visas, and it was a whole thing because you're not only are you staying over the 3-month limit typically that you're allowed, but we're working there. So they were really great at helping us very step by step, like figure out how to navigate the whole process.
So pretty much they helped you with everything, pretty much,
Yeah.
because that's the thing with studying abroad or working abroad is the daunting visa process, right?
Yeah, it's awful.
So tell us about the process.
So there's a lot of paperwork, a lot. And you have to get a lot of things translated and certified, and it has to all be done in like a certain order. And then you're not done once you get on the plane either. You have to, once you're in country, you have to do additional things. You have to do a health checkup. You have to actually go get like a preliminary visa. And I don't know if things have changed, but you had to go get a preliminary visa that they stamp in your passport. And then you had to go back later to get the actual visa. And if anybody knows anything about France or a lot of times Europe in general, like it could be very bureaucracy heavy. Like you think the US is bureaucracy heavy, you don't even know. So most of us either never actually got the final visa or got it like 2 weeks before we left, which is like, so it means it took a whole year to get the year visa, which is like mind blowing.
Oh wow. Oh wow. That's
It's
like you do all the paperwork and then it's, just it's funny how like you may not have to deal with all that paperwork if you're going for like 1 or 2 weeks, but when it starts to be 3 months, 4 months, a whole year, then it's like they gotta, check your health. You need like 2 and 3 visas. You gotta get your passports together. So it's a whole process that you have to go through if you're ever staying in another country for like longer than a month.
Yeah, and that's the easy process because, in the US, we're very privileged to have that blue passport and it, opens a lot of doors. So this is like the easy version. I can't even imagine what it would be like if you're trying to come from like another country where there's extra hoops to jump through.
Yeah, yeah. So now, okay, so an opportunity for you to teach English. So you said something interesting about that there is no training. They just kind of threw you to the wolves, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was terrified at the time. I was like really terrified of speaking, in audiences, like very massive stage fright, like all of those things. And so it's partly why I chose elementary school, because I thought, how intimidating can children be? Very intimidating, it turns out. Like little kids are not like, they're not known for their kindness. You know what I mean? When it comes to like they'll just tell you like, oh, your French is terrible. Or like, that's not how you say it. Adults are like, oh, your accent's so good. No, kids are like, I don't understand you. What are you saying? So that was really intimidating, but I kind of got over myself really fast because you're just faced with this, like child who they're not trying to be mean. They just don't understand what you're saying and they're going to tell you, without thinking about if it's going to hurt your feelings or not. But yeah, I had to literally, this also was pre like internet being everywhere. So it wasn't like you could just go online and like download a lesson plan or something either, or like watch a YouTube video about like, how do you teach, English to second language learners? There was none of that. It was just like buying books and like guessing and things like that. So I did buy some like teaching English books before I went. And then I bought some more like there, but it was a lot of guessing. I mean, the fortunate thing for me was, kids are very malleable. And so they're very open. And because you're supposed to only speak English in the classroom. So that's part of the thing that you're supposed to do while you're there. You have to speak French, you can, but for the most part, they really just want you speaking English no matter what. And, little kids, they pick stuff up pretty quick. So I remember we played a lot of games and we did like ABCs. I stuck to like, in the beginning, especially, I stuck to like really easy stuff, but they really, they're very smart and they picked it up very fast. And they started picking out phrases that I say a lot because those are the pieces that they would learn. And one of those things is okay. So I learned that apparently I say, okay, now we're going to whatever. So I would start each thing with okay. And so they just kept saying okay all the time. And these like little, ticks that you didn't know you had like start coming out because that's the piece they hear all the time. So they started adopting my ticks, and it's very strange to have something like that mirrored back to you.
So it's like what am I trying to say? So here you are in this leadership position. You're in college, you're young, right? And you chose elementary age kids because you figure, oh, they're easier than the older kids. And then you get into it and you're like, well, there's actually a lot harder than I thought because they're very
Yeah.
blunt and they'll just tell you to your face. But it sounds like as it gets to know you, right, they start to mimic you in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really smart. It was really cool, and I remember one of their favorite lessons that we did is in French they don't really have the th sound. So like three, they don't have that sound at all. So they have a really hard time saying it. And as a result, when we were doing numbers, they would often say free. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. And their mouths, like they were the age where they can pronounce the th, but they just, because it doesn't exist in French, it just wasn't very natural for them. So we played a game where if they didn't say it correctly, free in English means like you don't pay for it. It's free, right? So we started playing a game where every time they said free, they had to give me something for free. So at the teacher's desk, I just had these like random, like erasers and just like different like pens and things like that. And it wasn't mean at all. Like the kids loved it. They thought it was hysterical that like now like little Joey has to give her an eraser. But once they said it correctly, they got it back. But it was this whole game of like, so then they wanted to count all the time so they could play this game. So their counting was on point by the time I left.
Oh man. So then they started to warm up to you, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
And you were connecting with them.
Yeah. And I mean, like by the time I left, they were doing entire sentences in English that they built themselves. So that was like, that felt really good for sure to like see that these kids had zero English at all. And they were able to be like subject, verb, noun. It wasn't always correct, but they were able to communicate. I mean, I could understand them. So that was really, really cool. And even like write it and stuff too.
Oh. So the activities that you did with them, did you come up with those on your own? Was it a curriculum that was just given to you? How did you decide?
No, yeah. I mean, fortunately, I was already tutoring French. So in the US, I was already tutoring a lot of my classmates. And I had been doing that since high school. So in high school, I actually started tutoring. I picked up French a lot faster. And so I had already kind of had the experience of how to teach another language one-on-one. But again, I still never had any curriculum. I was just always ever going off of, when you're tutoring in school, there's typically like you have the teacher's curriculum, like the kid is trying to like catch up in class or whatever. So I learned a lot about teaching just from my own experience tutoring French. And I started using that experience just kind of in the reverse. But it is really, really hard to do that because none of us, I mean, especially if you're a native speaker, you didn't sit down and go, okay, what are the pronouns in English? What's a regular verb? What's an irregular verb? Like you just talk. Like those aren't the things that you focus on when you get to like English grammar, So trying to like actually research and figure out those things was really difficult. And a lot of times they would just happen. I would be like, why don't they? Oh, that's not like a regular verb. So we shouldn't use that because that doesn't make any sense. But like, to me, it's just how you say it. So I ran into that issue on a regular basis, which I didn't in French because I had learned French.
So as you were navigating another language, because you're teaching them English, so you're thinking about the conjugations and you're thinking about, okay, subject, verb, action, right? And so you find yourself thinking that for English as well, because it's like, wait, I have to understand how to break English down in order to teach these young kids English.
Yeah, I've like literally before then, I'd never conjugated a verb in English in my entire life. Like I never sat down and been like, I put, you put, he puts, they put. Like I just, why would you sit down and do that? But I had to do that to even figure out like what does happen on a regular verb in English. Like, the S, okay, it's an S when it's this. I really had to sit down and like do it on a piece of paper to figure out what I had to teach.
And what did you learn about the English language and the French language? What lesson did you take from kind of deciphering between the two languages?
I mean, it's always easy to say like your own language is easier, but I do feel like the conjugation of English is a lot simpler. And then we don't have, male, female. That's a huge help. So, the kids really had a hard time wrapping their brain around that because in French, everything's feminine or masculine, so we say, so table is female, for example, car is female, um, you know, door is female, things like that. And so their minds were blown that like, we just didn't have that at all in English. And even they kind of started because they have to learn those things when they're like little kids, to like, that's their part of their basic grammar lessons is kind of understanding those things, even though they already know because they speak it. Whereas our grammar lessons, are much different when we're little kids. So that was definitely interesting. But, another thing was interesting is when I was there, I'm the first American that any of them had ever met, and the first native English speaker that any of them had ever met. And so they took that opportunity to ask me anything and everything about America and the United States, which was cool, and I was telling them all kinds of things. But the United States actually also declared war while we were there. So we almost had to go home because they weren't sure if it was like safe for Americans abroad, like during this time, even though we were in France. And the kids started asking about that. And I was very not prepared for very little kids to even know that that was like happening because it's not their country, So it was just a very like, that really threw me off my game.
So they were very inquisitive, right? So it's
Very.
like, as you're the first American there, first native English speaker, so French isn't your second language, you're butchering French, right? So it's like you're this alien to them, and they're like,
Yes.
ooh.
Yes.
Like, why do you have those ears? Like,
Yeah,
so
basically.
it's like, why do you talk like that? And you don't break down male and female in the words, and then with the what year was this that you went?
This would have been, I was there 2002 to 2003. So we declared war in March 2023. Actually, I had to Google it the other day because I was like, how did that happen?
Which this was
2003, sorry. It was
this
after
was
9/11.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
When they were in Afghanistan?
Iraq, I think.
It was Iraq. Okay, the Iraqi war. Right.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. So you were at the time you were there, you were during a time of war, right?
Yeah.
So even that had to impact your whole experience.
It did. There were a lot of like protests in France. And so, there was like lots of discussion of like, be careful what you're wearing, like make sure that you're not, don't wear like a USA flag, don't wear like something like that, like hat or whatever. None of that really ended up being true. Like we never had the experience. The people found out we were American. All they did was ask us questions. It was never like, but we got all this information from like the State Department and stuff, sending stuff out to like people who were abroad, and like the people that were in our program, they were like, should we shut the program down? So they were kind of the program, orchestrators on the US side was like really worried because obviously they didn't want anything bad to happen to us and, have issues with the program. So for sure that was an issue. And then the kids asking like my opinion, like, do you think we should have gone to war? And I'm like, I am not trying to sit here and get in a political discussion with like a third grader, like what is going on here? Like I'm not trying to politically debate this kid either way. So it was eye-opening too, realizing that in general, I think when we travel abroad, like you might be that person's only experience with that country or culture, even taking it out of like little kids. So it's important to be like cognizant of what you say, because whether you want to be or not, you are a representative now, like, because they've decided that you are. So it's like,
Can you elaborate on that point a little? Elaborate on that point more.
yeah, I mean, like, I had my own political views. I think everybody did at the time, like however you felt about it, like most people felt something about it. And I was trying to like walk the middle road and be like, well, some people feel, X and other people feel Y. And the kids weren't having it. They were like, okay, how do you feel? And I just kept trying to like walk this line, because I was really like, the more questions, the more probing they were, the more probing the questions were, the more I realized, like, if I say, oh, we're only going to war for oil, for example, if I said that, then they're going to go home and be like, Americans think that the only reason we're going to, war is for oil, because for them, I am the whole United States, like that's it. Like, that's the way that they saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to be really careful about this, because I may also be the only person that they ever come into contact with from the United States, and now there's like this very contentious situation. And there's also like, I'm in this, again, I was not taught how to teach. So now I'm a teacher. And so I'm their teacher, and they're going to go home and be like, my teacher from the United States said. And so I just was trying to be really, really careful about like what this kid was going to go home and tell their parents what was happening at school. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's like, especially if they've never encountered an American before, and what they know about America is probably from like the media or from their parents, or what other people have told them. And then now here's this American that's in their face, and they're like, oh, is it true? Is it true? From what I heard about on TV and whatever. And you, it's like, you being the outsider, it's like you represent an entire country.
Yeah. And I mean, we had a lot of conversations among the group of us that were there. Like, how do we handle this? Like, what do we say to these questions? Because we actually all had like differing political views too, but like we all kind of felt the same way. And that, like, I'm not trying to get into some like political argument. And especially the people with like older, like the older kids, like the high schoolers, it's like, you for sure don't want to end up like having this high schooler go home and be like, this giant they're pushing these politics on us at school now. Like, it was just such a like complicated scenario to navigate, and nobody knew what to do. And there was no like, it's not like the people that were running the program sent us a message and were like, say these things, or anything like that. Like, we were all just kind of left to our own devices.
And because you're in this time of crisis, and the administration, it sounds like, weren't very helpful. It's sort of, you were kind of thrust into the fire a little bit. And
yeah, I mean, something that's like important to note about this type of program, and especially anybody that's watching, that if you ever do a program like this, they're generally run by the government of that country. So this is not an actual exchange program. In other words, it's not even on both ends. So a lot of exchange programs, 2 Americans go there and 2 French people go back. There was no situation. There's no like French people going to Lexington to teach French, right? It's fully a French government program, and the responsibility of like my university or the people on the US side was just like to help us navigate the application process. But we applied directly to France, so all the stuff that we did was in French, because in reality, like, all they did was facilitate, like, here's the paperwork, this is what that says, here's how you fill it out, this is the next step in the process. But it wasn't their process. They didn't own the process in any way. So once we were there, we were just employees of the French government. There wasn't, it would have had to have been the French government that was like, this is how we're going to handle all of the Americans that we have within our borders that are in this program, or all the foreigners, or whatever. And they didn't do anything like that. So, it was a very kind of left to your own devices situation, because again, like if it had been a fully exchange program, then there would have been somebody on the US side also, which there kind of was, just because of that sister city situation, but like they weren't really in control. I mean, fortunately, we weren't really under any like huge contractual obligation. Like we could just quit our jobs and leave if we wanted to. I mean, that was possible. But yeah, which is not always the case with every program. Like I think JET, for example, is like you have to do a 2-year commitment.
And, you know, and being that this was a short-term program anyway, you know, the war just kind of broke out while you were already there.
Yeah.
So it's like there's not really much you can do, and you already had the visa. So, but like you don't expect war. Like you don't, you know, oh, let me, oh, like, oh, war is going to happen in September. You know, like you don't plan it out. You don't schedule for it. It kind of just happens. And so when it happens, and now all these different countries have to navigate because everybody's frantic now. Like, okay, we have all these people from different countries. What do we do? And it's, you know, some tend to overreact or some underreact. So you are definitely in a weird period.
It was a really weird period. And then some of the people who were on our program in my cohort from Lexington had friends in the military who were now being called up. So they were kind of also faced with like, do I hurry up and go home so I can, you know, say goodbye to them? Like, what do I do there? So that was also like a whole situation. And again, this is not in the age of like, you know, Instagram Live. This is back in phone card days, you know, where you bought a phone card and you dialed the thing and you paid like X amount per minute to like call internationally. There was no FaceTime, none of that. So it's like all of these people were faced with potentially not seeing their friends again. So yeah, it was a very, very different period of time in terms of trying to study, or in this case, work abroad.
So let's kind of, let's move it forward a bit. So now, how long were you there in France?
So I was there for a year. Some people just did the academic year. So some people left, or, you know, once school was out, basically. But I stayed basically as long as I could.
And what made you want to stay as long as you could?
I loved France. I mean, at the time, I really wanted to live there. That was, you know, I kind of was thinking, I had a mind that like, I'm going to move to France one day, you know? And so this was just the ability to be there at least for a year, you know, go back, finish school. And then I was planning to come back. But yeah, so this was just my way of like squeaking out every last bit I could possibly get to be there. And again, like, you know, there's the money situation. So to be able to be paid, that was like even better.
Right. Because I mean, yeah, $1,000 a month to a college student is like,
that's so much money.
you hit the jackpot, right?
I was like, we were like rolling it. I mean, like, and the other thing is they charged us, I think it was like, I want to say 150. So it was euros back then. So it was 1,000 euros. And then we paid like 150, I want to say, euros for our dorm room. And I got to tell you, these dorm rooms were like next level dorm rooms. They were just mini apartments. I mean, you shared a bathroom with the floor, like a, you know, shower and all that, but you had your own little, like, you had your own sink in your room, like little kitchenette kind of area. So like a sort of a bathroom kitchenette area, just no actual like toilet or shower or like burner. And it was like separated. It was like a studio. It was like a studio apartment, essentially, just a small studio. And so we paid like almost nothing for this room. And then it's socialized medicine. So we're getting like free healthcare, essentially. So it's like we basically, and then the food there was not very expensive. So, I mean, you know, basically I had like 700 euros a month to just like travel or like, you know, have fun with, basically.
Oh yeah, I should have we didn't even talk about, so what did you do with your money, right? So after you paid so you paid like for room and board directly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did room and board. So then what's left? You decided to, I mean, I imagine you had to buy food and all that. So
Yeah.
after all the food, right? Then you just went and traveled about.
Yeah, we traveled a lot. The other piece was the age that I was 20. And so I turned 21 in France, very anticlimactic because you already can drink in France. And so we were able to go and like taste wine and stuff like that, which we wouldn't have been able to do, stateside. So that was really cool to be able to like actually travel. Dijon is wine country. So we could actually travel to like really cool like wineries. A lot of the wineries in the area, they're actually from their abbeys. In other words, like monks that created these like wineries from, way back when, the Catholicism and everything, wine, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of those are like the wineries, so to speak. So not quite, very cool experience compared to something like Napa or something like that. And again, we're like very young. We don't know what we're doing. So learned about wine in France, ate amazing food. We traveled out of the country. We went to Oktoberfest in Germany. We went to the south of France. We saw Monaco, which is like a small area inside of France, but it's its own like country, own separate place. Yeah, we went to Switzerland, got lost in Switzerland. I had to speak German. I know like 6 words of German. That was definitely interesting. I'll tell you one story. Don't do this if you're in Europe. So we rented a car from Avis, and apparently people in Europe, and I don't know what's the case now because I haven't rented a car in Europe in a long time, but you're just supposed to know that all Volkswagens in France or in Europe or whatever are diesel. Well, we're American and we did not just know that off the top of our head. And we rented the car. They did not tell us that. There was no information indicating this whatsoever. And so we put regular gas in the diesel car. And as one might imagine, that does not go well. You should not do that. Don't do that. So we ended up getting stranded with a broken down car and in a tow truck in, I think that was Germany, actually. I want to say, I can't remember if it was France or Germany, but yeah, that was rough. Definitely check the type of gas. Don't end up in that situation for sure.
That's hilarious. So I imagine with that, like, so you didn't know that cars over there take diesel.
No.
Wait, not all cars, or like that particular?
Not all cars, just apparently Volkswagens. That's just common knowledge, apparently. There were a lot of those moments, and we developed a like phrase that we would say to each other all the time, like "you're in France now," because we like one of our first events. This is again before digital cameras. You had to, snap and shoot, or like a friend of us had like a professional camera. That's how you took pictures, and you went to the store, developed them. I don't know how many people watching remember this, but that's how pictures used to work. So at the time in the US, you'd pay like, I don't know, maybe like $10 or something to like develop your pictures. It wasn't very expensive. And we went to develop our pictures in France. And we've already like handed them the film. They already developed the pictures. So it's like too late now. And they're like, I can't remember exactly, but they're like, that'll be like $45. Or I don't remember what it was, but it was something like astronomically expensive. And we all just were like, what? Like, we didn't even think to ask how much it was going to cost. Like, I don't know. And the guy just looks at us and he goes, "You're in France now." And we were like, okay, okie dokie. Pictures in France cost 5 times as much. Got it. Like, so anytime something weird like that would happen, like you're just supposed to know, insert thing here. We just look at each other and be like, "You're in France now." And it happened a lot more regularly than I anticipated.
So you got like a reality check, right? And that's one of the things of going to another country when you have to experience a whole different culture and you have to learn new things, and the way that you approach things, you're doing it in the way that you know back at home, right? So now when you're in this other country and they do things differently, you're in shock when you're like, oh, wait, so you don't do things this way?
Yeah, it is like, and you would think, like, well, I thought, United States and France, like, how different can they be? Like, yes, it's a different language, different culture, but like, we're talking like two Western, countries. Like, they're not so different, really. Like when you compare to like maybe Japan or I don't know, like Ghana or something, like those are, much more. But like the amount of times it happened, it really teaches you that just because things happen a certain way where you're from, that should not provide you any information for how things might work here,
Absolutely.
Another
And then you
time,
have to
like,
call the tow truck, so I imagine you have to speak French,
yep,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then how do you even find out about where to get a tow truck?
Yeah. So you call the gendarmerie, which comes and they are like a combination of like police and like fire kind of people. And so they come and assess the situation and then they called the tow truck for us. So that's how that went down. And then we all had to ride in the tow truck to like a random like shop. Of course, we're in the middle of nowhere because why would we break down in a city? And so it was just like, yeah, it was very, very dramatic situation. And again, no cell phones, like, or we had cell phones, but they weren't like smartphones. Like
Yeah,
Nokia.
old timey phones.
Old timey, yeah.
Oh man. All right. So for all this experience, right? So you were there all of this took a year. So what's so if you have the opportunity to, tell someone who's looking to do this type of program, for themselves, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
I think be flexible. Don't go in thinking like, I want to learn this culture. Like I want to experience this culture versus trying to kind of like fit your culture onto someone else's, and just like really be accepting of how things work. Because if you really try, we also experienced somebody in our group who was really like struggling with the French culture. Instead of just be laughing and being like, oh, you're in France now, like we all just kind of like would laugh and be like, oh, you're in France now. It doesn't work that way. But, there were a couple people who like really were like, no, that's not how this works. It works like that. And it really made their experience a lot less fun, and I think they got a lot less out of it because it was so much more of a struggle for them. And I think the rest of us like were able to have so many more positive takeaways from the experience, and just to like have fun and relax and just know that like at some point you are going to feel like a fish out of water, no matter how similar the cultures seem.
So that's interesting that you're saying be flexible with the culture, do as the Romans do, basically.
Exactly. Like you're not at home. Realize that, look around, try to observe what other people are doing, and try to do what they do. I mean, try to fit in and be flexible and, take the opportunity to learn someone else's culture and kind of like try it on for size in a way,
And what about the classrooms themselves, or what about the kids themselves? Like what advice would you give to prospective students?
I would say be flexible there as well. I think doing it nowadays would be a lot easier just because you do have like the internet and a lot of better options in terms of like teaching yourself. But I probably would have prepared a lot more, in terms of what I was going to teach and kind of understanding the lesson plans, because I was just so focused on like, I was so excited to go that like doing the job it wasn't the forefront of my mind. I was like, I speak English. I'll just speak English. It's going to be fine. And all of us kind of had that experience. We were all like, oh, I can't just speak English for an hour and expect people to learn. You have to like actually come up with something more. And we all came up with really interesting and cool ideas. But preparing ahead of time for the teaching part, I think I wish I would have done more.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to start to wind things down a bit. So now I like to ask my guests to give any words of wisdom to share with our audience. So I know you gave some wisdom there in terms of, prospective students or prospective foreign workers. But in general, is there any words of wisdom or any more words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think traveling and studying abroad is easily one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had to this day. And I would recommend everybody, if you can spend an entire year like that studying abroad, awesome, or working abroad, awesome. If all you can do is a few days or, a week or something in a foreign country, I think it's one of the most amazing things you can do for yourself in terms of your own personal life enrichment and just understanding the way the world works and how different people are.
All right. Beautiful. All right. Well, Jenae Spry, thank you for coming on Hot Topics. This was a very enlightening conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So now it is promo time. All right, you guys. So Jenae Spry, you can find her in a lot of different places. You can find her on the web. Her website is productivitystacks.com. She is also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all with the same account name, which is Doer Entrepreneurs. And she is also on LinkedIn. It is her personal LinkedIn. It is just her name, Jenae Spry. So I encourage you guys to go on social media and follow all of her accounts, and also learn about her business, which is, again, the website is productivitystacks.com. Jenae, can you tell us about your business?
Yeah, sure. So we actually profile different entrepreneurs. We interview them on the systems, tools, and people that help them create success. So if you are an entrepreneur or you're interested in maybe becoming an entrepreneur or just really like hearing and reading stories about entrepreneur stories, it's a great website. And we have a newsletter that we send out every week with a new story and a swipe file with all of that person's information.
Fabulous, fabulous. And speaking of newsletter, you have a promo going out right now. Tell us about the promotion.
Yeah, so you can sign up on our website. It's productivitystacks.com/newsletter, and you will get a weekly newsletter. And we also have our Schedule Success bundle, which we will send you. And it is a free bundle that basically just helps you set up your week for success and create a solid weekly plan. And that works for anybody, entrepreneur or not.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. All right, so make sure you guys sign up for that newsletter. The website again is productivitystacks.com. Take advantage of that promotion. And don't forget to follow her on all of her social media accounts. Once again, it is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all with the same name, Doer Entrepreneurs. And you could also follow her on LinkedIn. It is just her name, Jenae Spry. So I encourage you to follow her on social media as well. All right, Jenae, thank you again for coming on Hot Topics.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. All right, you guys, and that is it. We have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. Thank you again for joining me. All right, so I want to take this time to remind you that Hot Topics is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you are looking for a tutor, whether it is for yourself or for your child, if you have a child that's maybe struggling in school or they're maybe they're struggling with the English language, right? Maybe they're learning if they're a little kid learning how to read, or just they're not grasping very well, or whatever it is. Reach out to us. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also follow us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Eventbrite. So I encourage you to follow us on all of our social media accounts as well. It is just our name, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, all one word, with the exception of Twitter. The account name is ASATS2013. But please follow us on social media to learn more about us and the things that we have to offer. And again, I will give you our website. So if you're looking for one-on-one tutoring, college counseling, test prep, editing and proofreading, any kind of assistance academically, whether for yourself or for your child, hit us up, you guys. The website again, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. Maybe you have someone that's looking to study abroad, and you're looking for assistance with that process, or looking for schools abroad, or maybe you want some consultation about what's it like studying in another country, or being in a country for school for at least 3 months, 6 months, a year. You need someone to navigate that for you. We could do that for you as well. That could be part of the college counseling services. So if you want some guidance, maybe in international studies, you have some, a college student looking to study abroad, you can reach out to us as well, and we will help you navigate those services. All right, you guys. Thank you again for joining us on Hot Topics. I look forward to you guys joining the next episode. Thank you guys again. And now, as is my closing, I am signing off. Bye, you guys.